Hello, we are live. We are live. We are live. Hello, how are you doing? Welcome to my world. It is Tuesday. We are moving energy around. Lots of energy moving around. Things are feeling huge and also overwhelming and also exciting and also leveling up in bigger ways than we ever expected. So welcome to that era. Welcome. How you doing, Miss Kimmy? Thank you for being here. If you've never been to my lives before, they're pretty fun. For me anyway. It's a good time. We like to talk about singing. We like to talk about the mind. We like to talk about the nervous system. We like to talk about you as an artist. We like to talk about whatever is on your mind. And if that is something that you're not interested in, cool. Have a great day. I often don't know what I'm going to talk about before I get on here. I just kind of push the button and see what happens. But I do have a lot of stuff in my mind. Always. I have 8 billion things on my mind. I don't know if you can see this. This is what is on my mind right now. All of those things are on my mind. Too many things are on my mind. That is the thing that is, it keeps coming up also in sessions. Like sometimes we want to do so many things at one time, and there are many layers to singing. Like, of course, we have to think about breath support, and we have to think about how we are enunciating. We have to think about the space that we're creating. We have to think about your placement. We have to think about your registration, whether you're singing in your chest voice, your head voice, or mix. You have to think about the emotion behind the song you're singing. We have to think about why you're telling this story at this moment in this time. We have to think about your pitch, and we have to think about your reason behind making certain choices as an artist. Do I want to sing this moment in a really big belty chest voice, or do I want to sing it in a really light warm head voice? So you're thinking about approximately 27 things at one time when you're singing, and it's really hard to sometimes focus on one thing at a time. But I think that's really important when you're first learning, is to not force yourself to think about all the things all at the same time. And I'm trying to get better at that as a vocal coach. Like, there's 18 things I can coach you on at any moment, but of course that's going to be too much if I tell you all of the things at one time. So I try and focus on one thing at a time, especially for people who are just beginning, especially for people who are neurodivergent in any way. It depends on if you're super into multitasking or not, if you're ready for that. So I try and be better about keeping the focus on one skill at a time. And I think that's important for you to do in your own practice as well, because the second we go back into a song after rehearsing a certain skill, like say, for example, the skill I'm working on is breath support. I'm working on having a nice, fast, steady airstream the whole time. If I go back into the song after practicing on like 4 lines, and all of a sudden I go back in and zoom, I'm back zoomed in and thinking about all the things I'm doing wrong and why I don't sound like Adele, and I pronounced that word wrong, and oh my God, it's not good. It's really easy to get into that very small place with yourself and say, I'm not good enough. Why isn't this working? I just practiced for 15 minutes on this one thing. How come when I go back into singing mode, it doesn't work? Well, there's a possibility that you're trying to think about 8 things at one time instead of bringing that one skill and bringing it back into your song, and then giving yourself some grace and some slack on all the other things. Because so often when we go back into a song, when we're singing with music, our brain can only think about how it's heard that before, right? And this is a nervous system thing too. Like, your nervous system is not judging danger based on new things. It's comparing what's coming to what you have experienced in the past. So if your relationship with a song is only having heard Adele sing it, only on the recording, the studio recording, you're always going to be comparing your voice and how it sounds to how Adele sounds as the be all end all of how that song should always sound forever and ever. Amen. But that is extremely unrealistic. Number one, because you don't have Adele's voice, you don't have her instrument, you don't have her training, you don't have her personality. Okay, so automatically you got to separate yourself from Adele as a singer, or whoever the original singer is that you're trying to imitate / get inspiration from. Number two, you have to know that these recordings that you're listening to, unless it's a live recording, you are hearing so much studio magic, right? So you're hearing somebody who is only singing a verse and then only singing a chorus and taking a break in between. And then there's auto-tune, and then the breath sounds are taken out, and there is doctoring that happens in the studio. So what I always try to remind my students is like, take 18 grains of salt when you're listening to a certain artist and you're trying to sing their song, because of all these things. There's no way that you need to or can force yourself to focus on all the things that they're focusing on, because you don't have the same training that they do, right? Oftentimes I'm talking to just barely people who have just begun their vocal training program, and they're frustrated because they don't sound like Adele. I'm like, yeah, Adele's been singing for literally her entire life in front of people, building up her nervous system, building up her muscles, building up her vocal folds. Her relationship with her voice is very different from yours. And that's okay. We love that. You are where you are. And where you are is beautiful. Even if you don't sound like Adele yet or ever. There's a possibility that you won't ever sound like Adele, and that is also okay. And that has to be okay, because you don't have the same instrument as she does, right? So all these layers that we're trying to think about at the same time, Adele learned those things one at a time, right? Just like you are learning them. When she was just starting to sing, whenever that was, I don't know her history, whether she took voice lessons or not, or what kind of voice lessons she took. When she was just starting out, probably when she was a kid, she was thinking about only breath support for a little while until that became more integrated. And then she was thinking about space until that became more integrated. It's just the Adele you see now has integrated all these 18 layers. And so she can focus on the emotions behind it and do what she does best and be very accurate and very acrobatic with her voice, because she has integrated this stuff into her body over decades at this point. Yeah, totally. Live songs are better. Also, I love Adele, for sure. Also, listening to other covers helps. Hearing how other people sing it has been helping. Absolutely. That is so important. And I was reminded about that by a student today. She brought me a live version of the song that she was working on. And I was like, this is so much more important for you to hear than just trying to match the original studio version, because you're hearing a whole human's raw, real voice and not just comparing yourself to a robotically doctored track that is probably made up of 25 different takes of different parts of that song, at least. So it's very important when you're first starting out to learn how to listen to raw human voices, and including your own, especially your own. And so it's really helpful to listen to live singers in person is even better. Even sometimes without a microphone. If you know a singer, ask them if they can sing for you in person without a microphone, so you can hear all the little teeny imperfections that we don't hear on the studio versions of things. Layers, absolutely. All the layers are making up what you hear, combined with all the instruments, and there's no way your raw human voice can live up to that. Although I think it's more beautiful, you know. Personally, I love when live singers mess up, quote unquote, because they're human, right? And that makes me feel more human and okay to mess up when I'm performing as well. And also it gives me a lot of reminders that they're trying to think of all the 18 layers of singing as well, and maybe one lost focus for a minute. And if that happens to me on stage, it's not a problem. My audience is going to think the same thing about me, like, oh my God, she's human, thank goodness. It's just how you relate to that moment, you know. Ruby Rose of Muscle Music talks a lot about calling out your dog, which is just like when you're on stage and you're nervous and you try and hide it, it's worse than like announcing it out loud that you're nervous. Like, you want the audience to be right there with you, and you want to be fully honest with them so that you're not lying to them about what's really happening on stage, because you are the nervous system leader in that moment, right? So if their nervous systems are tuning to your nervous system and you are lying about what your nervous system is doing, they're going to sense that something is off, and they're going to be like, you are struggling or something, or you keep telling me that you're fine, but like something on a biological level is not computing, right? And so they're not going to trust you. Their nervous system is going to be on unstable ground as well. Yeah, absolutely. Your favorite singer most likely doesn't sing perfectly in a live show, but you're having so much fun. Yeah, she's having so much fun. And that's really where this nervous system leadership comes into play, right? We have to be willing to have fun in the face of nervousness. And that means being honest about it and saying, hey man, I'm so nervous that I'm going to forget the words. So it's going to happen. I've done that in shows many, many times because words are my kryptonite. I guarantee we'll forget the words at least once every time I perform. So if I go into that ahead of time and I say, hey, look, I'm really nervous. It's been a while since I've performed. Apologies if I forget the words in advance. And then I forget the words 20 minutes later and they're like, yep, she said that was going to happen. Cool. Forgiven, you know. But if in that moment I get really angry at myself and stop the song, they're going to be like, oh, what's going to happen? Are we comfortable? Do I need to leave? What? I don't like this feeling. Something is not computing here, you know. So it's okay if you can't focus on all 18 layers of all the things that singing requires you to think of: breath support, placement, emotions, all the things. But if you allow yourself some space to not be 100% perfect all the time, that is the most helpful thing you can do for yourself. Instead of forcing yourself to be in 18 places at once, you're going to end up overthinking. And overthinking leads to losing focus in one or two of those areas, right? Because you're so overthinking. At least for me, this is what happens. I start singing a song and I'm like, okay, this is the place where I usually forget the words. What are those words again? And so then the thoughts in my head are not the words, it's the worry about forgetting the words. And so I lose the focus on the thing I was actually supposed to be thinking about, which was the literal words to the song, you know? So in those moments, I have to remind myself that overthinking and the worry that I'm going to get something wrong ahead of time before anything even comes out is doing me a disservice. Even though my gremlin and my anxiety thinks that it is helping me by being hypervigilant and being like, oh, look at this. This is the thing you usually get wrong. Don't get that wrong again. That act of worrying about it is actually taking my focus and taking that little bit of brain power that I needed to not mess that thing up. And it is taking me away from it and actually causing me to mess up more. Same thing with, like, as we go for a big high note, sometimes we're thinking, okay, here's a high note. It hasn't gone well 100% of the time, but you know, I practiced it and I know how it works. All I need to do is to just hit it and I'll be fine. Get past this note. Great. It's a big hurdle. Once I'm past it, it's cool. But we're still thinking of it as a hurdle. And so our body starts to tighten up. Oh God, here's the moment. Here's the thing. Here's the big scary thing. When what you really needed to do was open and let it go as you went for that big high note. And so the thing that you are hoping won't happen is messing up that high note, is causing your body to tighten and tighten and tighten. And guess what happens when you're tight and you go for a high note? You're going to mess up that high note because that's what you're worried about and that's what's on your mind. And so the thing that we need to do in that moment is notice when these patterns come up and thinking, oh, I got to focus all of my brain power on this one thing so I don't mess it up. But in reality, it's so much better to be okay ahead of time with a possible mess up, because then we relax and our body relaxes and all of our muscles relax and we're open and in allowing mode for that high note to come in. And guess what happens when you're open and relaxed and allowing that high note to come in? It's going to go how you wanted it to go. So it's that negative versus positive feedback cycle, right? If you're scared of a thing happening and you focus on it and you try everything you can for that not to happen, your body language and where your mind goes, your body follows. So if you're hesitation and if you're trying to manipulate something before it even comes out, your body is going to go, okay, I'm ready. I can't let go and make this mistake. But if you're tight, that makes it more likely for that exact thing you're trying to avoid to happen. You know what I mean? Words. Yeah. So thinking about all the things is not always possible, but this is why we allow ourselves lots of grace and we allow ourselves to rehearse the things so that we have a solid foundation, so that your breath support becomes a muscle memory instead of something that you have to use your brain power for. Because we only have so many brain power pathways, right, in one moment, unless you're like master multitasker. Some people only have one or two pathways that they can think about at one time. Some people have 18 and that's fine. But it's really important for you to know how your own brain works, especially when you're singing, and especially what are the one or two things that do need to take up your brain power. So like if you have not really ever had a problem with your breath support, if you've not really ever had a problem with your pitch, then that's not something you need to take your brain power on when you're performing, because it's just going to take that brain power away from the two things that you need to work on, that you need to focus on. Like if you're somebody like me who forgets words constantly, don't hyper focus and overthink about your breath support, because it's probably fine and you're taking brain power away from actually thinking about the words. You know, we're all layered humans and we have many different parts of us. However, there's only so much we can focus on at one time. And being a performer really shines a light on that because this is why practices exist, so that we get so many things ingrained and integrated and settled in our body, so that you don't have to think about all of the things. You don't have to think about every single chapter in that book that you just read in order to know where you are right now and to be focused on what's happening in this current moment of the book that you're reading, right? All the other chapters you integrated and are in your mind, and you don't have to go back and check who is this person every 5 minutes, because you know it, right? It's in there, it's settled. Same thing with vocal training. Like, you know what your breath support needs to feel like. You know what space in here, in the back and the front of your pharynx needs to feel like in certain moments because you practiced it. You don't need to be thinking about that when on stage. The most important thing is connection with your audience. It's the story behind why you're singing it. And it is remembering the dang words. So I think a lot of times we think we have to think about all the things, but we really don't. Like, we need to practice ahead of time and rehearse and create a plan so that you don't have to think about more than two of those layers at one time. Apparently, neurologically, it's really almost impossible to be in an emotional focused place and a technique focused place at the same time when you're singing, because they're kind of two different parts of your brain. So this is why we practice the technique over and over again, so that that becomes a muscle memory, so that when we are performing, we can be in the emotions of it. We can be the human layers of it, and we can be looking our audience in the eye and saying, this is why I wrote this song, this is how it made me feel, and let me show you with how I sing it. Instead of being in like a recital mode, like, look at how accurately and perfectly I can sing this. Like, that's not what most audiences want to hear. I am not a teacher who does competitions with my students. I never went to college for like opera performance. Like, that's not me, and that's not how I sing. That's not what I sing. That's not what most of my students sing. It's not the only correct way to sing is not 100% accurate all the time. You know what I mean? So yes, accuracy is important. Yes, knowing how your voice works is important. Yes, having breath support and knowing where your placements are and having a technical knowledge of what your voice can do and having a plan and an intention behind the technique and the technical and the left brain parts of your song is very important. But once you step on that stage, unless you're at a singing competition, I'm not talking about The Voice or anything. I'm talking about like Nats and stuff, like competitions. Those are the only people that are listening for exact accuracy and technical execution. If you're singing for an audience at a show, in a bar, at an open mic, those people want your human self. They don't want your technical machine singing self, right? They want to know what's behind this song. They want to know how you're feeling. They want to feel how you're feeling. They want to connect with you as a human. And a certain amount of you has to be focused on connecting with them as a human on a human level. You know, you don't just get up and sing to be accurate, right? I'm assuming that's not why you're here. You're not here just to learn how to be a robotically perfect singer. Something drew you to singing because you love it. Something brought you here to even following me because something inside of you has a desire to sing and share your voice and to express your humanness through vocal music. So we don't need to be hyper focused on the technique 100% of the time. That's what I'm saying. There are many layers of that we do have to hold as singers. But since a lot of the people that are drawn to my studio are also overthinkers like me, I'm saying don't make yourself focus on all of them at one time. Build it up slowly. So you're starting with the thing that is the most glaring. And this is not the same for everybody also. This is why I teach in a student-centered way, because some people come in and they have a super great knowledge of breath support. We don't have to touch it. Some people come in and they have perfect pitch. We don't have to touch that. But not everybody starts from that place. So, oh no, I'm sorry, your phone is having issues. That's up. So it's really important to know yourself and I think it's important to have a voice teacher who will come at the technique from where you need to start from. So if you are one of those people that needs to start with pitch, great, let's start with pitch. I'm not going to take you through a bunch of accuracy exercises if we're just focusing on having a solid tone and matching your ear to what comes out of your voice, right? So I'm doing my best as a vocal coach as well to just help you focus on one thing at a time. And once that is starting to become more muscle memory, then we move on. And we might have to come back to that first thing, and that's fine. It's not a failure. It's not a problem. Everybody needs review all the time. As we're learning, I'm always reminding my students of, oh yeah, remember that thing we did a month ago? That applies to this song too. You can't just leave it behind, right? Things don't just integrate and stick forever. We have to remind our body to do that. You remember your nervous system is just looking out ahead of you for things that it recognizes. And if something is new, it takes time to consistently bring that into your evidence that your nervous system is gathering all the time. Your nervous system is always evidence gathering. Oh, look at that. That happened. That was good. That was bad. That was okay. Blah. If you consistently, every single day, every single week, bring these things into your awareness, into your evidence bin, then they will start to become less and less scary. and they will start to become more and more ingrained, and you won't have to remind yourself. I won't have to remind you quite as often. But that doesn't mean that they're going to stick every single time, right? As I said, we only have a certain bandwidth of focus when we're singing. So you might be super hyper focused on your placement and then forget about your breath support. And that happens sometimes. And that's why I'm here to say, okay, that was great. You nailed that placement that we were working on. Now, see if you can hold on to that and remember the breath at the same time. And so then we're practicing holding two things at one time. But I'm never going to say, hopefully, if I've said this to you, I apologize. I'm going to try never to say, okay, that was great. Now think about this and this and this and this at the same time, because that's a lot for your brain. Unless you're a genius multitasker, and great, good for you. But I'm a chronic overthinker, and if I'm given 5 things to think about, I'm going to overthink about 3 of those things, and the 2 are going to be left behind, right? So there's only so much we can do. So give yourself some slack. And remind yourself that you're human and you're not a robot. And there are many important things when you're singing, but you don't have to think about all of them all the time, especially if you're just starting or starting back after a while. Give yourself the space to have one skill be imperfect and sit in that for a while you're working on another skill. That's, I think, the hardest part about this, is because we are so trained to not want to sit with imperfection and with gross sounds that come out of our mouth, that we need it to be fixed. And if it's not fixed, then I'm failing and I'm not doing the other skill right either, right? So if I'm focusing on one skill and the other skill is not happening, we are really bad at sitting with that and saying, it's okay for now. It's okay for now that that skill is not happening because I'm focusing on this other skill. And that is a harsh way to treat yourself. Think about it if you were a little kid and you were teaching a little kid like long division or something. I don't know if this is a good metaphor, but I remember that being a really hard thing because I had to think about addition and multiplication and subtraction at this all at the same time in order to do division. I was like, this is ridiculous. What's happening? And so imagine you're trying to teach a little kid version of yourself how to do this. And they're getting overwhelmed and they're like, but I can't do all these things at one time. It's too much. What would you say? You'd be like, it's okay. Let's just do one step at a time. Just one. Don't think about the other ones right now. That'll come later. Okay? Just think about this one thing. Subtract this from this. What's that? Don't think about everything else. This from this. And then slowly, one step at a time, you start to be able to put all the pieces together. But that overwhelm is a real bastard. It really is. Overwhelm is a real thing, and it changes your nervous system state. I have found that many times. I just started this book on Audible, and it is called Effortless. And I'm really excited about it because it's exactly what I need. I know how to what's the word I'm looking for? I know how to delegate to my brain and say, okay, I can't think about that right now. I'm thinking about this one thing. This is more important. But the hardest thing for me to do is to say that other thing is absolutely not important. Like all the things that I'm doing are important. And that's the same thing with singing. Like all of these skills are important. But how do you say this is the one I'm choosing, and how do I make it easier for myself while letting go of all those other things? Because they're all important, they're all part of the process, but it's really hard to let go sometimes because we feel like we have to be a juggler and we have to hold 18 things in the air at one time when we're singing. Otherwise, we failed. And that is a big deal. And that's why I talk about the gremlin so much, because that is a gremlin voice. For sure, if you're in your head saying, I failed because I didn't hold up all the juggling balls of breath support and placement and registration and emotion and nervous system leading all at one time, that is way too harsh. You wouldn't say that to your little kid self. Why would you say it now? Yes, you're an adult and you can multitask better than you could when you were a kid, but you're learning a new skill as a singer, right? You're learning how to grow your skills as a singer. You're learning how to perform more in front of people, I imagine. You're learning how to maybe record yourself. And that is more pressure on yourself than you were putting on it before, right? Anytime you step out of your comfort zone, there's going to be more pressure. Your nervous system's going to be slightly engaged, slightly dysregulated, depending on how far you're putting yourself out of your comfort zone. So give yourself some love, right? If your nervous system is heightened, it's not going to feel the same way as it does when you're sitting on the couch. So why would you give yourself those same regulations? Like you have to be perfect and you have to do all of it at the same time. You have to keep all the balls flying. If you are putting yourself outside your comfort zone, no, we're not going to force that on a little kid. Why would we force it on ourselves? Doesn't mean you have to. Which part? I'm inclined to agree with you, but yes, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Actually, like that's the best part about learning a new skill as an adult. Like you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. It's great if you do take steps outside your comfort zone, and it's great if you allow yourself to make mistakes. Oh, just because you can multitask doesn't mean you have to. Yes, agreed. Fully agree. One of my dad's favorite sayings, and I made a little keychain of this for him. It's just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I try and remember that all the time, because so many people do things just because it's possible, and they put all this pressure on themselves, and doesn't mean they should be doing that thing because they think they should, for whatever reason. I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but I showed you all the things that are on my brain right now of things that I want to get done. Like imagine if I tried to hold all of these things in my brain every single moment of every day. Look at this. What? Why is this all in my brain? Because I'm a multi-passionate human being and I love it and hate it at the same time. But dear Lord, if I tried to hold all of that in my brain at one time, I would short circuit every day. And sometimes I do. But at least I write it down so that I can bring myself back to it later. And that's sometimes what singing feels like. It's like, oh, I gotta do that thing and that thing and that thing and that thing I practiced, and I don't know how well that note is going to go, so I probably better hyper focus on it for the next 2 seconds and not think about the words that are coming before it, and just better suck it up and do it right. I don't know if your brain sounds like that, but mine does. So what I'm saying is one thing at a time. One thing at a time. Give yourself some space and some grace, and remember to talk to yourself like you would talk to a kid who's learning something new and who's frustrated and who's overwhelmed. One thing at a time. And then as that one thing starts to integrate and become more a part of you, then you can branch out a little bit at a time. But don't force yourself into a pit full of like 5 different snakes, because you can't focus on one at a time. While you're fighting one, another one's going to bite you. Yeah? My metaphors don't always work. It's fine. Yeah. So one snake at a time. There you go. How's that for today's lesson? Any questions? Anything you're dealing with before I go? This has been a long one because I always get so excited. I just want to talk about all the things. Anyway, I'm here for you. I hope you have a lovely holiday season. Another thing I want to remind you about as singers and performers is if you're working on technique stuff, give yourself a break over the holidays. Like, let yourself just sing silly Christmas carols and not think about the technique for a little bit, because this season is hard enough as it is. So give yourself a break, sing what you want to sing, and don't hyper focus on getting it exactly right all the time. Yes, you're in vocal training. Yes, you're working on your voice. Yes, you're working on nervous system training. However, so much is going on during this season. Sometimes it can be really good to allow ourselves to remember that singing is fun. And this is why we love it so much, because it's fun. So don't get too far in the weeds about getting everything exactly right, and remember to sing songs that you like. If you want to go sing Christmas carols in front of your favorite coffee shop, go do it. Enjoy yourself. If you want to go blast metal and sing along in your car and not think about the technique, do it. Just be careful. Don't hurt yourself. Thank you for being here. I love you all. Appreciate you very much. Keep an eye out. I have a couple big things coming on the vocal coaching side in the new year. I have a membership that is a lighter commitment membership than Vocal Magic. So if you have been interested in Vocal Magic in the past and have been like, that's too much a commitment for me right now, keep an eye out. That will be coming in January. And then if you are wanting to level up, Vocal Magic is coming back. Opening another cohort February or March, I want to say. So if you want to dive in and go on a big adventure with me, it's a 6-month program, and it's all this stuff, but right in your face for 6 months. If you're a person who wants to practice this nervous system training and practice singing in front of other people so that you start to expand your comfort zone little bit by little bit, that's the place for you. However, the membership, the lighter commitment membership, which I believe will be called Enchanted, singing with the magic theme. If that's something that intrigues you, let me know what kind of stuff you want to see in there, because I'm happy to post stuff that will be less one-on-one time with me, of course. But happy to post videos about whatever you want to know about, because I got lots to talk about, as you can see. I love talking about this stuff. I'm also doing a lot of theater things behind the scenes, so I apologize if I'm not on here as much as I would like, but I'm going to keep this Tuesday date for as long as I can. So appreciate you. Have a lovely day.